What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 314 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, I want to talk to you about Ultimate Iron Man Armor Wars by Warren Ellis and Steve Kurth. This is another one of those minis that came right after Ultimatum as a fresh jumping on point into the Ultimate Universe. And this being a Warren Ellis story, I wasn't sure what kind of Warren Ellis we were going to get here. Generally, there are two different possibilities with Warren Ellis. You'll have something that's really amazing, like The Authority or Planetary, or you'll have something that's very subpar, like that Wolverine story that he did right after Operation Zero Tolerance, or Avengers Endless Wartime, or I would even say his Astonishing X-Men run in the mid-2000s. I feel like there's very rarely a middle ground in between subpar and really amazing. A lot of times it feels like he's just there to spew his political views without really much of a narrative worth telling, or he's just there to collect a paycheck, which is almost even worse. So I had read this book a long time ago, and I remembered almost nothing about it. So already going into this to reread it for this video, I wasn't sure if this was going to be very good. Since I didn't remember anything about it, I didn't think that that was a very good sign. And I think this book is just kind of there. It's not really great. I think maybe if it was longer, it might have stood out a little bit more. I think we would have remembered this book more fondly if it had been, say, 8 issues long instead of just a 4-issue miniseries. And the problem here is that we kind of rushed through this breakneck speed on this plot, and then at the very end of the book, we get this twist that does not make any sense at all, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then at the end of the book, we get to see Tony having a human moment, which he doesn't really have throughout the rest of this book, and it doesn't feel earned because this is such a short story. At the end, I feel like I'm supposed to care because Tony is sitting here crying into his whiskey that he's drinking, and I feel like I'm supposed to care about him, but I don't, because he hasn't really acted with a whole lot of human emotions in the rest of this miniseries. So the plot here is that right after Ultimatum, Tony is going to his headquarters to make sure that all of his technology is still there and that nobody has stolen it, because this would be a really good time for someone to go and loot some really dangerous Iron Man technology at Stark Enterprises. And there are 2 people there trying to steal his stuff. There's Ghost, who I guess was introduced in Matt Fraction's Iron Man run right around the time that this was coming out. I know absolutely nothing about the character of Ghost. I don't know anything about him here either. He's basically just a lackey working for the big bad of this miniseries. I don't think he has any dialogue at all, so he's not really important at all. And then you also have Justine Hammer, who is the daughter of Justin Hammer, who appeared in the Ultimate Spider-Man comic by Bendis and Bagley in the early issues of that series. I think he was the guy responsible for Electro getting his powers, and we find out here that he also experimented on his daughter, Justine. And Tony saves her life, and then he and her kind of fall for each other, and then they go around the world trying to recollect Tony's stolen technology. At one point, he fights this guy in a castle somewhere in Germany. He has like a purple Iron Man suit with a skull painted on the face, and Tony is making these sex jokes. He says, "Is this a sex thing? Because I'm not judging." And I didn't really understand where that was coming from. This armor doesn't look weird or kinky. It just looks like a normal Iron Man armor that's purple and has a skull painted on the face. So I didn't really understand that. And then at one point, they fight this guy with MODOK living inside his head, and there's like no pomp or circumstance there. It's just like, oh, okay, there's a MODOK in his head. No big deal. Everyone acts like that's just a normal thing that you see. So that was a little strange. At one point, he goes to England and he fights some British police officers who are using his armor as riot control. And he even kills one of them. And then everyone is like, okay, it's just a misunderstanding. It turns out we're using stolen technology. We're going to give it back to him. No hard feelings, right? And I feel like even though Tony is trying to take his stolen technology and they were kind of fighting him on that, when he kills a cop, I don't think that it would be smoothed over that easily, but maybe I'm just underestimating how that situation would really play out in the real world. And then at the end of the book, spoilers for the big end of the story twist, we find out that the guy who is behind all of this is Tony's grandfather, Howard Stark Sr. This does not make any sense at all. We are told that he was working on something for the government that was so secret he had to fake his own death, and that he's been hidden in this bunker for all this time, and everyone who knew about him is now dead or has forgotten about him, which I don't think that that would happen. I think somebody who is this important, you wouldn't just forget about him. And he is close to dying, so he wants to steal Tony's technology to prolong his life. Okay, that works as a character motivation, I guess. I just don't like that it's Tony's grandfather. This reveal comes completely out of nowhere. He says at one point that working on cybernetics like Tony does is part of the family history, and that every Stark does that. This is inconsistent with previous versions of Tony that we've seen in the Ultimate Universe. We never got any inkling in the Ultimates by Millar and Hitch that Tony's dad worked on stuff like this. We got an inkling that he was doing this because he was close to death and he wanted to make things right. In the Ultimate Iron Man minis, which were themselves inconsistent with everything else in the Ultimate Universe, we don't get any inkling that Howard Stark ever worked on anything like this. We get an inkling that Tony does it himself for his own reasons. This is inconsistent with both of those versions of Tony. We never ever got any sense that Howard Stark worked on Iron Man-esque stuff, or that his father worked on Iron Man-esque stuff. So that's kind of weird. I feel like this old man could have been anybody. It could have been any evil businessman. It could have been Justine Hammer's dad. It could have been Justin Hammer, who had somehow faked his death earlier in the Ultimate Universe, and now he's back for revenge against Tony. I think that would have been a more thematically relevant twist in this book, since you already have Justin Hammer's daughter here. And then she could say, hey, I wasn't really mad about my dad experimenting on me whenever I was younger like I pretended I was. I think that would have worked a little better as a end of the story twist. Also, I think the character motivation would make a little bit more sense, because you could say that Justin Hammer does want to prolong his life, but he also wants to get revenge on Tony. I think that having it be his father or his grandfather is a twist that comes completely out of nowhere and doesn't really work for this story. Also, the weapon that Tony uses against his father and Justine is really stupid. It doesn't make any sense at all. It's just really goofy and comes out of nowhere. I won't even talk about that. I don't think that the story is very good. It's not just mind-numbingly boring like his Wolverine story that he did, but it's not good. I don't think that this is the kind of Warren Ellis that I want to read about. On the scale of Wolverine, Not Dead Yet, and The Authority and Planetary, this falls much closer to that Wolverine story than it does The Authority and Planetary, unfortunately. So those are my thoughts on Ultimate Iron Man Armor Wars. I hope that you guys liked this review, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back tomorrow with a different video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of your day. Catch you later.